Hands down, I believe that I have the best job in the world. I've been an executive director for over 25 years working in a charity that works with families in every stage of domestic crisis. Me and my team are what we call extreme bridge builders. We build bridges in the lives of children to ensure that they can separate themselves or reach the distances that are so difficult for them to reach when they find themselves separated from their families, from health, from hope, from themselves. We are extreme bridge builders. No chasm is too far or too wide. No river is too rough. No destination too remote. I'm so proud of my staff because we really are extreme bridge builders. And none of us have engineering degrees. I have a quote on my wall that reads, "The only way to discover the limits of the possible is to go beyond them into the impossible." We go beyond the limits of the possible every day in building our bridges. We often see the good in people before they do. We start to build bridges on our side, and then we help them to build the bridge on their side. The work is often messy, difficult, dangerous. But the results span new distances never before traveled. People give me advice every day. Every day. They say things like, "That boy will never learn to be normal again. That father is no good. I wouldn't trust him as far as I can throw him. That mother should never live with her children again." That word "never" triggers something in me that why never? It's not impossible. There are some broken pieces here, but there must be a bridge somewhere in there. There must be. We all need to build bridges, small or large. I know most of you recognize this one. I live in a community, a very small community, and we feel each other's pains and problems. We can't escape it. It's right next door, down the street, in our offices. Sometimes people would like to retreat into their own carved-out privacy and try to ignore the problem, but we can't escape it. We need to find ways to build more bridges. And my job is to help to get rid of that false sense of peace that we can just ignore the problems. We can't. When the bridge is there, you don't think about it. But when the bridge is missing, when the child has no family, when the family can't provide for itself, when the generation simply gives up, who's to help? Does anyone want to help? After all, the child lashes out, the family asks for a handout, and the generation turns to crime. Who should help? Should we help? We could just medicate the kid. We could just blame the family. Or we could just lock up the generation. But they will be back. And we certainly know the children will be back. So when a bridge is missing, we can't ignore the problem, but it becomes very difficult because children will be back. We need more bridges. But these are the problems that my organization is the most interested in. We care about those that are marooned and those that are abandoned, and those that believe that no one will ever build a bridge to them and don't trust that anyone will build a bridge to them. But we must, and we know how. So what do? I want to tell you what we did. I'm going to tell you the story of Rachel. I'm going to start by reading this quote. "A bridge of silver wings stretches from the dead ashes of an unforgiving nightmare in the jeweled vision of a life started anew." An unforgiving nightmare. But she needed a vision of a life started anew. Rachel was the middle daughter of a woman who came to see us, concerned about her 3 children. Her concern was based in the fact that her husband had just simply one day decided to up and leave the family. The reasons why he left is not so important at this moment, but the fact that he left and left behind 3 small children was very concerning. So Susan, who I will call her, the mother, came into us, as you can well imagine, concerned about her 3 children. So we sat down with Susan and asked Susan, so what is your vision for yourself? And what is your vision for your family? She started talking about her weaknesses. We started talking about her strengths. And then we got to meet her 3 children, and particularly Rachel, as I will call her. Rachel was often sad and angry at the same time, and you could see it the moment you saw Rachel. She loved her dad. They had a very special connection. So when he left, it was a very traumatic event for her, particularly leaving without saying, I knew you'd get that. He didn't say goodbye. So Rachel was sad and angry often. So one evening, Rachel came into us particularly angry. And we could see it the moment she walked in the door. And we had spent some time working with Rachel, engaging Rachel, developing trust with Rachel. But this particular evening, she wasn't having none of that. Her anger got out of control. She started yelling and screaming, flailing her arms, and it became a fairly dangerous situation. By the way, Rachel was only 8 years old. So my colleague, as he's trained to do, grabbed Rachel very gently but firmly to calm her down. Of course, Rachel began crying and screaming and flailing her arms much more. But he gently continued to hold her, and at one point sat down with Rachel on the floor, just holding her. And she cried and struggled and struggled and cried and cried and cried for over 2 hours. And there was my colleague holding her and letting her know that she was safe. That she was safe. As you can well imagine, after 2 hours of this, Rachel tired out, and she fell asleep in the arms of my colleague. And he just sat there with her. Eventually, she woke up, and we just looked at her, and she just looked at us. Something had changed. She felt safe. She had learned the lessons of trust. She got up, hugged my colleague, as I'm sure he was very happy to receive that hug, and then she left with her mother. Engineers tell us some basic rules for building a bridge. You must work to establish a solid foundation on both sides. Solid foundation in the ground. Rule number 1. Number 2, you need to stabilize the structure to make sure it can withstand high winds. Number 3, you need to have a commitment to work steady over time and to work hard. And number 4, you need to have a shared objective to ensure you form a stable connection. Well, my colleague was a masterful engineer that evening. He had developed a solid ground with Rachel. He had stabilized the relationship. He certainly worked hard over a long period of time, and he made sure that there was a firm connection in the middle. Rachel and her family are doing quite well today. She's 24, as I date myself. The last time I spoke to Rachel, she reminded me of that evening. She said she had learned a lot. She was only 8. But she said to me, "I'll never forget it, and I'll never forget the person who was willing to build a bridge to her." Rachel has a wonderful vision of success in her heart today. I want to tell you another example of building bridges that we have at our program. When you see this picture, do you see bridges? Is it possible to build a bridge? What do you think? Yes. We have a heart underneath. It must be possible to build a bridge. We have a wonderful program that has been gifted to us from the North American Family Institute based in Boston, Massachusetts. The goal of that program is to bring together youth and police. The teenagers that come to us in this program are normal teenagers with normal problems. However, most of them also have very difficult family circumstances and situations. And just as with Rachel, the tendency when you have the very difficult situations that these young teenagers have, the tendency is to simply shut down or to boil over with anger or to find something to drink or to smoke. That takes away the pain. But these teenagers became willing to come to the program. And so we asked them to come into our program and to tell us of their stories and their visions for success for themselves. We encourage them, we celebrate their achievements, and we hear their stories. And then when they feel very comfortable with us, we ask them to go into the impossible. We ask them to tell their stories to police officers. They agree. We bring in police officers, and they sit and they listen compassionately and intently and with empathy. And then we ask the police officers to share their stories of growing up. At one point, in one of the sessions, the entire room was in tears as one of the police officers told the story of growing up with an alcoholic father. While another police officer, a female police officer, told about the period in her life when she was arresting domestic abusers and then going home and becoming a victim of domestic abuse herself. Her colleagues, her police officers, had no idea that this was happening to her. So the young people listened to their stories and realized, well, they're very similar to mine or ours. And there you are. A bridge has developed. A natural bonding, a joining together, empathy and trust and respect. Ta-da! There's the bridge. They built a bridge. It is possible. A natural bond formed, a bond that replaced fear and judgment. And bridges that aren't used are of no use to anyone. And so we encourage the police officers to work with the kids, tutor the kids, problem solve with the kids. You must use the bridge. They go back and forth over the bridge, and they exchange support and empathy. So empathy and respect are the bricks and mortar of our shared experiences. And trust and safety is what makes the bridge building possible. We must have more bridges. We need more bridges. So let's talk. They did. You know the result of their talking? It was the end of the Cold War, and the Berlin Wall came down through building bridges. Sometimes bridges need to be repaired. I will never forget the day my relationship bridge with my daughter had to be repaired. My daughter means the world to me, and I'm so grateful to have her in my life. And I will never forget the day that she approached me to say, we need to talk. For all of you parents in the audience, if your child comes up to you and says to you, we need to talk, you're actually blessed, because you don't want your child not to come to you. But at the end of the day, it was very clear to me that I had to figure out how to be vulnerable. Every inch of my being said, uh-oh, how will I do this? But if I am not building a bridge to my daughter's heart every moment of every day, then I'm doing such a disservice. So I stopped for a moment and listened and was vulnerable as she took me to the land of trust to rebuild the planks in our bridge. It was a very important moment for me. I'll never forget it. It was very humbling. It's very defining. I love my job, but this was a whole new world. And the magical piece of it was that my daughter was willing to take me along the road with her to strengthen our bridge. There's nothing like it. So yes, bridges need to be built, but bridges also need to be maintained and repaired. And we all must do it. We can do it. At our organization, we build over 300 bridges a year. It doesn't mean that we don't want to build 1,000 more, bridges of all sizes and shapes. We should be building bridges with our families and friends. We should be going to and working at companies that build bridges. We should be voting for politicians that build bridges. We should be voting to build bridges. We need more bridge builders. I love my job. Imagine that. You build it. As I look out at this audience, I see engineers. I see extreme bridge builders. So I challenge you to build bridges. No, actually, I challenge you not to. The world needs you. My name is Martha, and I love my job. Thank you.